There is a very specific, ice-cold prickle that starts at the base of your skull and crawls down your spine long before your brain actually understands why. You might be hiking a familiar trail, the air smelling of damp pine needles and sun-baked granite, when suddenly, the temperature seems to drop 5 degrees. Your skin tightens. Your heart rate hitches. It's a sensory alarm system, older than your language and deeper than your logic, telling you that you are no longer alone. You scan the tree line, and for a split second, you see it, a pair of amber eyes, perfectly level, watching you from the shadow of a cedar limb. The common wisdom tells you that you're being hunted. It tells you that a hungry predator is measuring your throat for a killing bite. But almost everything you've been told about why wild animals stalk humans is backwards. We have been taught to view ourselves as helpless prey stumbling into the territory of fearless killers, but the reality is much stranger and, in many ways, much more unsettling. You aren't being stalked because you look like a meal. You're being stalked because you are a terrifying, unpredictable mystery that the animal is trying to solve before you have the chance to solve it first. This misunderstanding begins with the myth of the natural prey. We tend to think that a mountain lion or a wolf looks at a human and sees a slow-moving, clawless, hairless version of a deer. It's a logical assumption, but it ignores the very specific way a predator's brain is wired to recognize food. Evolution doesn't reward animals for being adventurous eaters. It rewards them for being efficient ones. A large ambush predator like a cougar has a mental prey template that has been refined over millions of years. This template looks for a four-legged silhouette, a specific horizontal orientation to the ground, and a very particular rhythmic gait. When you stand upright on two legs, you break that template entirely. To a wild cat, you are a bipedal anomaly, a tall, vertical tower of meat that moves in a jerky, inefficient way that nothing else in the forest moves. This silhouette is your first shield, but it's also the reason the stalking starts. Because you don't look like food, you look like a potential threat. The animal isn't following you to see if you're tasty, it's following you to see if you're dangerous. This silhouette follows us into a complex world of biological math, leading us to the second major myth, that stalking is an escalation toward an attack. In reality, stalking is a data-gathering mission. In the world of high-stakes survival, information is more valuable than calories. To understand this, we have to look at what biologists call optimal foraging theory. This isn't just a fancy phrase. It's a cold, hard equation that every predator runs in its head every single day. The equation is simple. The energy gained from a kill must be significantly higher than the energy spent on the hunt, plus the risk of injury. For a wild animal, a broken leg or a deep gouge isn't just an inconvenience, it's a death sentence. They don't have hospitals. If they can't hunt, they starve. When a predator stalks you, it is running a forensic analysis on your physical condition. It's looking at your gait to see if you're injured. It's listening to your breathing to see if you're exhausted. It's checking to see if you're aware of your surroundings. Most importantly, it's trying to figure out what your weapons are. Since you don't have visible teeth or claws, the predator is waiting for you to do something that explains how you survive in the woods. When you keep walking, oblivious and upright, the math usually fails to add up. The risk of the unknown outweighs the reward of the meat. But that same silhouette is also a lens through which we view the fear of the predator itself, which brings us to the most pervasive myth of all, the idea that apex predators are the kings of the forest who fear nothing. If you could see the world through the eyes of a mountain lion, the forest wouldn't look like a kingdom. It would look like a minefield. This is what ecologists call the landscape of fear. For a long time, we thought animals only moved based on where the food was. We now know that their movements are dictated just as much, if not more, by where they think they might die. And here is the unifying truth that dismantles our sense of being the victim. In the modern world, the most terrifying thing in the landscape of fear isn't a bear or a wolf. It is us. We are the super predator that has rewritten the rules of the wild. The proof of this is found in the work of researchers like Justin Sarasi and Liana Zanet from the University of California, Santa Cruz. In a groundbreaking 2019 study published in Ecology Letters, they set up a grid of hidden speakers in the mountains. They played recordings of different sounds, the calls of local frogs, the growls of apex predators, and the sound of humans talking. The results were immediate and staggering. When the mountain lions heard the human voices, just people reading poetry or chatting in a normal tone, they didn't growl back. They didn't stalk the speakers. They fled. They abandoned their fresh kills, giving up precious calories just to get away from the sound of a human voice. The mere acoustic presence of a human was enough to suppress the behavior of the most powerful cat in North America. This wasn't a one-off event. Similar studies in the African savanna showed that elephants, impalas, and even lions reacted with more intense fear to the sound of human conversation than to the recording of a lion's roar. We aren't being stalked because the animal is brave. We are being stalked because the animal is trying to manage its absolute terror of us. The silhouette of the human represents a history of violence that the animal's ancestors learned the hard way. This leads us to a myth that is particularly dangerous to believe, that predators have an instinctive urge to kill humans. If that were true, there would be thousands of attacks every year. Instead, there are a handful. The reason is that most predators have a learned, multi-generational wariness of our species. We are the only animal on Earth that kills from a distance. We are the only animal that retaliates with coordinated groups. In the evolutionary memory of a wolf pack or a leopard, a human isn't just an individual. A human is a beacon for a much larger, much more lethal force. The stalking you experience is the animal trying to reconcile its fear with its curiosity. It's hovering in the gray area between, is this a threat I need to neutralize, and is this a ghost I need to avoid? However, we must dismantle the myth that this fear is permanent or unbreakable. This is where the silhouette becomes a target. The fear predators feel for us is not a biological constant. It's a fragile behavioral state maintained by distance. When that distance collapses, we enter the world of habituation. This is the most common reason why stalking actually turns into an attack. When an animal stalks a human and nothing happens, no loud noises, no aggressive movements, no consequences, the fear starts to evaporate. In psychology, this is called extinction of a conditioned response. The animal's brain updates its data. I followed the biped for a mile, it didn't see me, it didn't hurt me, and it smells like the ham sandwich in its backpack. Once the fear is gone, the prey template finally has room to expand. A habituated predator isn't a tame predator. It's a predator that has finally finished its math and decided that you are, after all, a viable target. This shift in the silhouette is often fueled by another myth we need to destroy: the idea that predators only stalk us when they are starving. While hunger does lower the threshold for risk, most man-eaters in history weren't just hungry. They were broken. Take the famous 1898 case of the Tsavo man-eaters, 2 lions in Kenya that halted the construction of a railway by killing dozens of workers. For a century, the myth was that they were just evil, or exceptionally hungry. But when researchers at the Field Museum of Natural History analyzed their skulls decades later, they found the real truth. The lions had severe dental disease and jaw injuries. They couldn't hunt their normal, tough-skinned prey like buffalo or zebra, because the struggle would have been too painful. They turned to humans not because we were a preferred choice, but because we were the only thing they could physically manage to kill. They didn't stalk because they were peak predators, they stalked because they were refugees from their own biology. This brings us to a transition in our understanding of the silhouette as a tool of ecological change. We often think of our impact on the wild in terms of things we take away, chopping down trees or polluting water. But one of our biggest impacts is the fear we add to the system. This is a myth-busting concept in itself, that our presence in the woods is neutral if we aren't hunting. It isn't. Every time you hike, every time you mountain bike, your silhouette is sending ripples of panic through the ecosystem. A 2017 study by Sarah Reed and her team found that in protected areas where humans were allowed to hike, the activity of bobcats and coyotes dropped significantly compared to areas with no human access. The predators weren't just avoiding the humans, they were changing their entire life cycles, becoming more nocturnal and less successful at breeding. Our stalking of the wilderness, even with cameras and hiking boots, is a form of pressure that most animals find unbearable. The silhouette also masks a deeper truth about the mechanics of the stalk itself. We tend to believe that if we can't see the animal, it isn't there. This is a comforting myth, but it's completely false. In mountain lion country, for every cat a human sees, the cat has likely seen that human 100 times. A study using GPS collars on cougars near urban areas in California showed that these cats spend an enormous amount of time in close proximity to humans, sometimes literally in people's backyards or overlooking busy hiking trails, without ever being detected. They aren't stalking in the sense of preparing to kill. They are coexisting through surveillance. They are keeping an eye on the most dangerous neighbor in the neighborhood. They have learned that the best way to stay alive is to know exactly where we are at all times, ensuring that our silhouettes never overlap with theirs. This leads us to a unifying truth that ties all these busted myths together. The stalk is a conversation. It's a tense, silent dialogue between 2 apex predators, one of whom has forgotten how dangerous they are, and one of whom remembers it all too well. When an animal stalks you, it is paying you the ultimate compliment of its attention. It is acknowledging that you are a factor in its survival. It is weighing your speed against its own, your awareness against its camouflage, and your history against its future. The reason the stalk almost always ends with the animal slipping away into the brush is that after all the data has been collected and all the math has been done, the animal reaches the same conclusion its ancestors did. You aren't worth the risk. But we have to be careful about the myth of the friendly wild. Just because the animal is afraid of you doesn't mean it won't kill you. Fear is a volatile emotion. If a predator feels cornered, or if it feels that its young are threatened, that landscape of fear can flip in an instant. The stalk then becomes a defensive maneuver, an attempt to drive the threat away before it can do harm. This is why the standard advice for encountering a large predator is to make yourself look as large and loud as possible. You are reinforcing the very thing that keeps you safe, the myth of your own terrifying power. You are leaning into the danger shape that the predator is already worried about. By yelling, waving your arms, and refusing to run, you are confirming the predator's worst fears about you. You are saying, yes, I am exactly as weird and dangerous as you think I am. The silhouette of the human in the woods is a complex symbol. To us, it's just a person out for a walk. To the animals watching from the shadows, it's a tall, pale specter of an ancient enemy that has the power to change the world. This is the ultimate reframe. When you feel that prickle on your neck, don't just think about the predator's teeth. Think about the predator's mind. Think about the massive amount of energy it is spending just to keep track of you. Think about the way its heart is likely beating just as fast as yours, if not faster. You aren't just a visitor in their world. You are the monster in their ghost stories. This realization changes the way we should walk through the wild. It replaces the myth of the hunter and the hunted with a much more accurate model of mutual avoidance. We are two species trying to navigate a shared space without accidentally triggering a catastrophe. The stalking is a safety mechanism. It's a buffer of time and space that allows the animal to make a rational decision instead of an impulsive one. Without the stalk, without that period of observation and assessment, there would be more accidents, more panicked lunges, and more dead humans and animals alike. The silence of the forest isn't an absence of activity. It's a highly coordinated dance of silhouettes moving in and out of each other's awareness. As we bring this silhouette into focus, we have to address the final myth, that we can ever truly know what an animal is thinking. We can use studies, we can track GPS collars, and we can analyze bite marks, but there will always be a gap between our science and their reality. This gap is where the mystery lives. It's why the prickle on the back of your neck will never go away, no matter how many books you read. Your body knows something that your brain is trying to debunk. It knows that while the math says you're safe, the forest doesn't run on math alone. It runs on moments. It runs on the one time the calculation fails. It runs on the one animal that didn't get the memo about human super predators. This silhouette of fear is the only thing that allows us to share the world with creatures that could easily tear us apart. It's a fragile peace treaty written in the language of shadows and stares. We have dismantled the idea that stalking is a simple prelude to a meal, replacing it with the reality of a complex, data-driven survival strategy. We've seen that our voices are more powerful than a lion's roar, and that our upright posture is a biological warning sign. We've learned that the animals aren't just watching us, they are monitoring a threat that they have lived with for millennia. The next time you are out in the deep woods and that cold feeling finds you, don't panic, don't run. Running is the only thing that could fix your silhouette into a shape the predator recognizes as prey. Instead, stand tall. Let them see your verticality. Let them hear your voice. Let them finish their math, because as long as they are stalking you, they are still undecided. As long as they are watching, they are still afraid. You are a puzzle they aren't quite ready to solve, a ghost they aren't quite ready to touch. The image of that amber-eyed stare from the beginning, the one that made your skin tighten, is not an image of your death. It is an image of your protection. That animal is doing exactly what it needs to do to keep itself, and you, alive. It is maintaining the distance. It is honoring the landscape of fear that we both inhabit. It is weight watching, assessment following, and ultimately, it is deciding to let you pass. Because in the cold light of the evolutionary morning, the scariest thing in the woods is, and has always been, the person standing in your boots. But there is one final detail you should consider before you head back out. Remember that cold prickle on your neck, the one that started before you saw the eyes? We call it an instinct, a sixth sense, or a leftover trait from our own days as prey, but scientists have a different name for it. They call it the gaze detection system. It's a highly specialized cluster of neurons in your brain that fires only when something is staring directly at you. It's so precise that it can tell the difference between something looking at your shoulder and something looking at your eyes, even in the dark, even through dense brush. This is the definitive proof of our shared history. You have that system because, for millions of years, the stalking was real. The math was different back then. There was a time before the human voice was a weapon, a time when our silhouette was just a slow-moving target. And even though we've spent the last 10,000 years turning the tables and becoming the most feared thing on the planet, our bodies haven't forgotten the old rules. They haven't forgotten the weight of those amber eyes. So the next time you feel that chill, remember, You aren't just imagining things. You are participating in an ancient, high-stakes ritual. Your brain has detected a sensor sweep from a rival predator. It has heard the dry snap of a twig that wasn't caused by the wind. And while the science says you're likely safe, your DNA is reminding you of the one rule that hasn't changed in 100 million years. In the woods, nothing is ever just watching. Everything is calculating. And as you walk back to your car, feeling the weight of the silence behind you, just remember that the only thing keeping that animal in the shadows is its belief that you are more dangerous than it is. Don't do anything to prove it wrong. If you've ever felt that phantom gaze while out in nature, or if you've had an encounter where the math of the wild felt a little too close for comfort, tell me about it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how many of you have experienced that sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature. It's a part of the human experience we don't talk about enough, and hearing your stories helps us all understand the landscape of fear just a little bit better. If you want to keep exploring these kinds of biological rabbit holes and dismantling the myths of the natural world with me, hit the subscribe button. There's a lot more waiting in the shadows that we haven't even touched yet. Until next time, keep your eyes open, your voice loud, and your silhouette tall. The woods are watching, and now you know exactly why. Now, as you sit there safe behind your screen, think back to the very first moment we talked about that dry, metallic smell of the forest and the snap of a single twig. That twig didn't break because of the wind. Wind bends green wood, only a heavy, deliberate paw or a shifting weight snaps a dry branch at the base. You heard it. Your brain flagged it. And the reason you're still here to think about it isn't because you were lucky. It's because the creature that stepped on that branch was running a calculation on the back of your head, looking for a reason to stay in the dark. It saw the way you adjusted your pack, the way you moved with the confidence of a species that has conquered every corner of this earth, and it chose the shadow. The haunting truth isn't that they are out there waiting to get us. It's that they are out there perfectly silent, absolutely still, terrified that we might finally turn around and see them. The prickle on your neck wasn't a warning that you were about to die. It was a confirmation that for at least one moment in your life, you were the most dangerous thing in the woods. And the silence that followed was the sound of the animal agreeing with you.